All right, hello everyone. I don't know exactly how many folks are viewing right now, but we are officially live and I'm open and available for questions. I'll probably do a brief introduction when we get a couple more people in here, but for right now, I think I'll just hang out and wait a little bit until we get some more folks in the Hangout and, make sure everyone's able to get this fired up who wants to join us. Hey, Clayton. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Can't complain. Excited to get to
That's
talk
good.
to you guys. Did you come loaded up with questions?
I have a few.
All right. Well, now is actually probably not a bad time to ask, since we'll probably get some more people coming through here in a little bit. Um, you know, so while you're here, how can I help? What do you got?
You want me to start?
Sure.
So, I guess my first question would be, is this a realistic goal for somebody with little to no computer experience?
Well, I mean, it's a realistic goal. It's just a question of on what timeline. I mean, I think a lot of it, I mean, it really comes down, yeah, you do need to have computer experience at the point at which you begin it. It's just a question of, how long is it going to take you to get up to that point where you're ready to go. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
everyone starts from somewhere. So, I think it totally depends on your life. So actually, I'm kind of curious to hear. I mean, where are you coming from with this? What's your story coming in?
Well, right now I'm on a temporary federal position, and it may get extended, but it possibly will end in October. So I've been doing research into learning more about this and possibly getting into one of the boot camps
Hmm.
and just
I think I mean, I think one thing about boot camps is, regardless of again what the format is, whether you choose to go to an in-person one or take hours, or a number of different things. Also, in the realm of going back to school and things like that. In the end of the day, you need to understand, that whether or not that's ultimately something you want to do, and that requires you to kind of get to a certain point of certainty. Because really boot camps are designed for people who have a strong idea that this is ultimately something that they want to do, that this is the path that they want to walk, at least for a few years. Obviously, no one has to plan out your entire career or anything. And I think to get to that point, you have to have gone through a certain amount of sort of self soul searching, as well as get enough experience with the material that is this a good fit for me or not. So I mean, I usually say the best first steps are to just try and get yourself some experience as soon as you can in whether it's to your original question, whether that's sort of becoming more familiar with computing in general to start out with. That's obviously sort of a prerequisite to everything. And then I think the next step would be to start to dip your toe into coding. We'll potentially take a look at. I mean, I'm probably going to recommend this a lot tonight, but I think our prep work is great. So I always recommend, for people who are interested in maybe kind of dipping their toe and seeing whether they can learn something, or whether that this is a right fit, that maybe taking a look at our prep work is a good place to start.
in there.
Sorry, I think you kind of auto tuned out there. So I don't know if I'm the one who's not working right now, or if it's the rest of you folks. So just let me know, please, if you can't hear me. You can actually ask questions. We have a questions app here, and so you're welcome to use that. If you need to notify me of anything as well. To be honest, I've never used it from the consumer side, so I've never actually submitted questions. But you have the option using this questions app, the Q&A app. It's a little blue icon on the screen here. So does anyone, any of the new folks have any questions, or actually, Genevieve, did we capture everything that you wanted to ask, or are there any other questions that I could help you out with? All right, let me check on. So until someone asks a question, I'm just going to check on the Google group because it sounds like you guys are awfully quiet, which might mean that I'm the one who's actually lagging here. And I just want to make sure that that's not the case. Yep. Heard some activity.
So yeah, I think I got my mic working.
Oh, okay, great. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I can't complain.
Cool.
Uh, Clayton, do you have a question?
Um, yeah, I've been like preparing like for the quiz or the that I don't know, test you on your algorithm skills and stuff. I just wondering like uh how much should we know before taking that?
So are you referring to our automated coding challenge?
Yeah. So I applied and then I got the coding challenge, so that's where I'm at now.
So basically, for that, you just need to be familiar with for a bit of. Sorry, Juhu, there was some background noise there, so I had to mute you. So for the automated challenge, basically we expect you to have a comfort level with the basic building blocks, and really for us that means looping, conditionals, conditional logic, basic data types, essentially, I mean the stuff that's covered in the prep work, particularly that fourth lesson, going through Ruby, is more than enough to take on the first coding challenge.
Okay, is there like any resources other than Project Euler to get more practice?
Aside from the prep, I mean, geez, I think we've linked out to a whole bunch of them. I mean, if you're looking for a little bit more challenging stuff, there's certainly things like Reddit Daily Programmer. There's like you said, Project Euler. There's also Project Euler. What's the other one? I mean, there are things like I think CoderByte and HackerRank. I mean, those start to get pretty intense, and that's well beyond what you need to do for the coding challenge. I mean, the coding challenge is really just to make sure that you've gotten yourself up to kind of that first rung, and you can take a problem and solve it. It's nothing, no trick questions, no algorithms certainly.
Okay.
So I see a question coming in here. So let's see. Someone says, I've done an online boot camp and now I wish I hadn't paid for it. I won't bash them and say which one because they were actually really cool. It was worth about half of what I paid. What suggestions would you have other than continuing to learn on my own? That's kind of a difficult question to answer. Whoops, I selected the wrong one here. My bad. I'll get to the one I just selected first, or second rather. So should you continue to learn on your own? I think there are probably too many variables for me to really answer that. I mean, I guess a lot of it depends on why was the online boot camp not a fit. Why do you think that it wasn't worth quite as much as you'd paid for? How much of that was due to quality of their program versus the overall experience of learning online versus kind of how it fit into your own life. So I'm sorry to kind of punt on the question, but I guess it's a little bit difficult to really address that. I don't want to make too many assumptions about the reasons why that wouldn't have worked out. So sorry. I know that's not necessarily helpful, but I just don't think that I can really answer it. So let me try one more here from the people who are watching. So it's Kelvin. hey, what's up? How do you go about helping the cohort get a job afterwards? What's the process like? And yeah, if we can touch on that lightly. So basically, I mean, the beginning and end of the job search is always going to be you. I don't ever want to oversell things or or raise expectations too high in terms of no, there's no such thing as a job on a platter. If you're looking for silver bullets, they don't exist. And I would hope that anyone else in this industry, again, in-person boot camps, online boot camps, it doesn't matter. I would hope that anyone else would say the same thing. That in the end of the day, it always comes down to how good are you and how much hustle do you have. Those are the skills that it takes to get a job in any industry, doing anything, and it's no different for coding. So you've got to be good, and you've got to hustle your butt off. That said, the things that we do to help, obviously, is on one side is to help you get good. I mean, that's obviously the core. The core of our whole curriculum is making you a better programmer, giving you the fundamentals and the foundations that you need. In particular, diving deeply into some of the things that are really useful for you if you're looking for a job context. Again, we dive a little bit deeper than a lot of other folks into certain areas like algorithms and data structures and software testing that you don't always see, but which are actually pretty important for job search. But to specifically talk to the actual job search and job placement and job help side, that basically starts on day one. So we actually we help you from day one start to think about like what are the things that you're going to need to be doing over the next 14 weeks or 16 weeks or 6 months to really try and make yourself marketable as well. Because nothing. It isn't like the program ends and immediately you start job search and there's sort of this light switch effect where you're kind of like, okay, great, I'm in the job market. Okay, great, I have a job and I'm going. It's very much an exponential curve where there are some things that you can and should be doing during the program as well, like helping to kind of raise your profile on the internet, make yourself searchable, clean up your online presence. Start a blog. We really highly encourage blogging because I mean, from having hired people and from having to to do a lot of both sides of this, helping students get jobs and also being on the job side myself. Blogs are far and away the best thing that you can have because it suddenly, as soon as you search for someone, it gives you this massive trove of insight into how they think. So in the very beginning of the course, we start teaching you those kinds of things that the ways that you can optimize that as you're going through the course, and spending X amount of time per week, which is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger towards the end of the course. And then especially in the second half of the course, we really start diving into the actual interview prep. Because there's a lot of different phases of the job search process. I mean, it's basically a funnel, right? You have to apply, and then you have to interview, and you have to succeed in the interview, and then you have a negotiation, and then you finally finish up. And we basically walk you through that whole funnel, and we say like, how do you kind of optimize and increase your chances in all of those different phases? Like, well, what are the ways that you can shortcut some of the things? Essentially. No one wants to be going in the front door when you can go in the side door. The front door being just sending out your resume to monster.com and all those other places. The side door being building actual relationships with developers in your local community or in your online communities. And then leveraging those to kind of open some doors for you. So we talk about all those things, but again, the second half we start to focus a lot on the actual interviewing side of things, with the assumption that you have the hustle and you have the resources to start kind of getting yourself out there, and then we talk about the process of interviewing. We do mock interviews. We do algorithm questions almost every day, so that you basically we have you interviewing to the point where you get bored about interviewing, and that's a good thing, right? Because there's the point at which you're kind of bored of interviewing is the point at which actually you're going to crush it in interviews, because it's when you've had that much practice doing something, you just get good at it. And so we really help you out on that. And then the final side is at the very end, we go through what we call the hiring boot camp, which is where we're working on final projects, and we're also going to be working through a lot more of these mock interview style things. And so doing end-to-end mock interviews, so culture fit interviews, technical interviews, and again, like working really heavily on like, okay, so what is your portfolio? What do you bring to the table? What's your personal narrative? How do you tell your story? Things along those lines. and really push it forward in terms of how are you going to be putting yourself out there. And then the last little bit is that we're going to be connecting you as much as we're able to. Again, I'm not going to say there's no such thing as a job on a platter, but we are going to be doing everything in our power to connect you with people. Obviously, this is a geographically distributed program. A lot of people want to be moving into certain areas, and our network is better in those areas typically anyways. And so we're going to be doing what we can to connect you with direct opportunities or with people who can help you get direct opportunities, like recruiters who kind of specialize in this kind of thing. And then during the job search period, so that's kind of like the arc of the course itself. There's this sort of exponential curve going into like how much time and energy and effort we spend, going into the actual job search. And then once you're in the job search period, it's a much more supportive role where we kind of try to keep you in this framework because I mean during the course you're working an insane amount of time, and so when you leave the course you want to keep that kind of momentum, because the key is just like there's no question about it. It doesn't matter if you do it in a program, out of a program, on your own, or whatever. Job searching sucks. No one likes job searching, but it's a full-time job, and it definitely shouldn't be underestimated. And so we really want to make sure that you keep the momentum going too. And so we support you through that. We keep you accountable to the progress that you're making. And really try and identify, see if we can get feedback from people, if we have connections and you've interviewed at places, see if we can get feedback. And then on the other side, also just try and support you with, okay, great. So if these are the areas where you're having trouble, if you're getting interviews but you're not actually passing interviews, then clearly we have to work on interviewing. So it's not quite as high touch as being in the full-time environment of the program, but there's very much, we're obviously accountable to you until you get hired, and so it's, we want to make sure that we're there supporting you as much as we possibly can. Super long answer. I hope that's helpful. So I see questions popping up here, and I'm not actually sure exactly where I'm going to look at them, so I think that's probably in the chat. There we go. Okay, so I'm sort of juggling. There's the chat window, and there's also like the questions app, so I'm going to be kind of bouncing between them. So Andy Tumko, you say, is part-time enrollment a possibility in the future? So we're actually currently running some things where we're allowing students to do a part-time option. And so we have some places on the site as well where it says, contact us if you're interested in part-time. So I guess that's about as much as I can say on that. Again, because it's not really public. But if you're interested in part-time, send us an email, and we'll talk. So the other one is Genevieve. Welcome back. So you're saying how well are boot camps accepted? How well are boot camps accepted by employers as experience? And so I think that's really area dependent in a lot of ways, and I think it's also kind of you have to define acceptance. And so if you're defining acceptance in terms of if they see something on your resume, do they respect it and they sort of add value to it, or they subtract value from it? I don't really think boot camps are necessarily really in that so much. I don't think they're a big positive or a big negative. I mean, occasionally an employer will have had a good experience with boot camp students, so that'll help. Occasionally employers will have had a bad experience with boot camp students, so it won't. Like out in the Bay Area here, there's obviously a much higher familiarity with boot camp students, and there's also the employers have their boot camp IQ has risen, so it's a little bit more acceptable, and they sort of know what that product looks like, speaking in that way. I think out in the rest of the country, it's a little bit more of a sort of up in the air. I don't think it necessarily means anything, which is fine, because I don't think any of the boot camps have ever really gone out and said that we think that we're a brand that competes with a full-time degree or anything, because there's just no way that employers are gonna make that equivalency, despite the fact that we could have a whole other conversation about why or they should or shouldn't. But so what it comes down to, though, luckily, is what have you done? And so that's why the whole idea of the approach is to actually build up your portfolio and to build your skills, and in the end have you build a final project that you're passionate about, that you can put on your resume. you can put on your GitHub profile. Hopefully you can launch it even and get some traction on something like Hacker News or whatever it is, and kind of get yourself out there with it. And then so they see that on your resume and they see something interesting and they say, oh, okay, this person clearly has some interest and passion. Let's bring them in to talk to them, and then the conversation becomes more about, what have you done and what are you capable of, and that's again really an effect of the portfolio that you have and the skills that you're gaining as opposed to kind of the brand name associated with this. Andy says should market in Pittsburgh. They don't have any boot camps. Duly noted. Let me check on the Q&A app here real quick. Okay, well I guess there's no questions there. So you folks in the chat here. Sorry. Oh, the Pittsburgh, yeah. Yep. We're part of our mission is definitely to try and raise the availability of this kind of education. So it's been really great to see people coming from all over the country to sort of congregate together and get this experience, which is really the point. So, but I know there's more questions out there. You guys aren't done yet. We're just getting warmed up. Okay. Can we touch on the difference between this bootcamp and the Odin project? So the Odin project is an open source project. It's an open source curriculum for learning web development, which I started about I'm not even sure how long ago that was. It was at least 2 years ago, and it basically represents a very do-it-yourself approach to learning web development. It sort of takes you from zero to what you need to go and get yourself hired. It also outsources most of the content, so it kind of wrangles the content together, provides explanations of things, and then says, these are the things that you need to go and do. And that actually works for some people. I've had some awesome success stories from people who have taken that. I mean, it's totally free, so I've had some awesome success stories from that. And frankly, a lot of people actually go the other way, which is part of the reason that we've moved from just doing the Odin project to starting the Viking Code School was actually hearing from people who are going through Odin and saying, this is a great start, this is a great idea, but I want more structure, I want more support, I want more feedback, and then on the other side we've also found that how critical that feedback component really is for getting you that last mile. And how much value we can add as instructors to really challenge your assumptions along the way, because there are definitely more difficulties when you're learning on your own. I think Odin is a really good. I'm obviously highly biased, but I think Odin is a really good path to take if you're learning on your own. But it comes with the inherent challenges of learning on your own still. And so, in terms of what are the differences, obviously we provide an extraordinary amount of support on top of that, as part of our program. We provide the support going into the program as part of the prep work. We do it during the program. We do it after the program. We have job search support. And then on the curriculum side, the curriculum has been built from the ground up with Viking. I mean, we have, at this point, I think, over 600 lessons put together, which is an enormous amount of content and demos and videos and projects and solutions and all this stuff pulled together. So I mean, the quality of materials is incomparable as well. So okay, so let me answer a question from Kelvin again. So he says, I don't care much for CSS. How much do I have to know for the interview? You do not really need to know CSS for the interview. So the interview, we're most interested in understanding how can you translate logical concepts and logical problems into code solutions. In the end of the day, that doesn't mean that I think if you can do that, you can figure out CSS. HTML and CSS are their own rabbit holes for people who are very concerned about the specifics of the front end. I mean, there's a reason that designers and people moving from sort of the designer side of the spectrum into the front end engineer side of the spectrum have jobs and they spend so much time working on this stuff. But in terms of our program, we're definitely most interested in focusing on your ability to do logical thinking and to solve code-related problems. So CSS not really part of the interview. You can use we prefer JavaScript or Ruby because those are the two core languages of the program. So don't stress out over HTML, CSS. I mean, you should know it because you need to know it, but it's not part of the interview. Okay. What types of jobs, employers, and salaries have your graduates started with? So the full-time program is actually the first full-time program that we're running is actually starting on June 29th. So that's the first run that we've had. So basically what we've done so far is in the fall we had a 12-week part-time program which was a little over 300 hours overall. And then we're currently running a 16-week part-time as sort of our part two of that. And so neither of those programs were in quite the same level of depth as we're going to be covering in the summer program. I mean, the summer program is 2 to 3 times as deep and wide as that. Part of that is that the fall program also we didn't have the same job support services and things like that. So it's definitely not an apples to apples comparison. We had students. The students got jobs. We don't track average salaries. I have no idea what they make. That wasn't really part of the program then, and it's definitely become more part of the program. So I don't know if that helps. I mean, if you have follow-up questions, I'm happy to engage with that. What kinds of projects will students work on? So basically, the way that we've kind of set up the flow of the course is, we have lots of little projects to sort of help you. They're almost like homework-sized projects to help you understand the concepts, and then we have larger projects at the end of each unit to really kind of pull everything together and help you accelerate. So that really depends on the unit exactly what it's going to be, but it's we have, let's see, I just want to think about what the projects are, what the weekending projects are. You guys, well, okay, so I'll actually start from the top down with the largest project. So the largest project you build is the final project, and so that's going to be a 2 to 3 week project, which could be either just you or you and a group of people, and it's really designed to take everything you've learned and showcase all of that and bring it into a package that actually represents something really interesting and useful. Ideally something that sort of falls within your previous domain expertise. So if there are things that you're passionate about or things that you do, ideally you build something for yourself. So that's the most important project, because that's the one, again, that when you're sitting down with an employer that they're really going to want to talk to you about, because in theory it represents the most difficult technical challenge that you've taken on probably in your life, and also one that you're hopefully very passionate about. If you sort of back it down into the course, we have you build the major project. The multi-unit project is a full-featured social network. So if you I don't know if you've done like the 1 month Rails or the Hartle tutorial. There's like a Pinterest clone and there's a Twitter clone. So we build a full-featured social network that's far deeper than any of those, and it takes several. I mean, it's basically in line with Facebook, and that covers us over several weeks, and so that's definitely a showcase project from the course. Another one that we use to really focus on underlying data fundamentals. Things like SQL queries and so it's query optimization, query organization, active record in Rails, which is the query interface on top of Rails. So really getting into the guts of data, we built a multi-unit project, which is an e-commerce app, where essentially you put together all the seed data for all these products and users and orders and numbers and things like that, and then you sort of create your own admin interface that pulls all this data out and displays it in really interesting ways and does all this stuff with it. And then eventually we end up building the front end, which includes a shopping cart and some other, just like a checkout flow and some other stuff. And so those are kind of the major projects. But then we've also got kind of the unit ending projects along the way. We've got you build a web scraper, you build a basically you rebuild jQuery in Ruby, you let's see, you do a test-driven Minesweeper project, which a student actually just wrote a blog post on, which I think we probably tweeted about. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I'm going to mute. Yeah, so let's see. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking in my head like of all the projects that we have going forward, and then there's a number of JavaScript projects as well. You know, as we progress into that side of the curriculum, that do like more front end type stuff. We do a lot of games because games are fun. We sort of try and strike a balance between doing games that are interesting and that really kind of force you to teach core, to think object oriented and think you know, CS fundamentals, and then on the other side we want to do more realistic projects, the kinds of things that you see in the real world, you know, that we give you using user stories, like Agile stories, you know, and you sort of build more web interfaces and things like that. So there's a balance between the two of them. I hope that helps. So what other questions can I help with? Has any graduate ever scored a job upon the completion of the program that was extraordinarily above what you guys expected, like a mid-level dev position or higher, or alternatively, a job that was totally random but in a cool way? So like I had previously mentioned, our fall cohort, which is the only one that we've actually, you know, it was the one that we'd finished in, well, basically the end of last year. We had a small number of students that kind of came in with a whole bunch of different things that they wanted to get out of the course. You know, we had an existing developer who wanted to level up and things like that. We had a couple students get jobs while they were finishing the course. You know, and they're doing, you know, one of them is doing ops, one of them is doing growth hacking. We have a guy doing startups, and then I've hired two directly in to work with us as developers. So I think that more or less covers kind of the spectrum of people who've gone through. So that's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool question, you know. So they have a wide range of different things that they went into. We've you know, as the course has progressed, we've definitely focused more and more on the depth of software engineering, and you know, really pushed into dev jobs as being the focus. But in the end of the day, you know, people got out what they wanted to. Yeah. Oh, okay, got it. More questions? Hit me. I'm here. If we've been through actual U.S. Army boot camp, will we have an edge going through this coding boot camp? So if you've had the discipline to complete something like that, I have to imagine you have the discipline to complete something like this. You know, there's no question that it's difficult to spend this much time doing something. You know, I mean, I think that there are strengths and weaknesses of the boot camp approach, of the immersion full-time boot camp approach. You know, one of the strengths is that it really allows you and requires you to focus in a way that you can't focus anywhere else. One of the weaknesses is that requires a significant amount of self-discipline and, you know, ability to basically kick your own ass and keep yourself going. You know, because you're going to hit the wall again and again and again, and you just have to bounce off, ask for help, move on, figure it out, Google it, skip it, whatever, and continue going forward. I think if you can go through U.S. Army boot camp, then I think you probably got that factor figured out. Do you expect to have a fall schedule? If so, what would the dates be, and what would the timeline be for applying? So at the moment, we have our program starting June 29th, and that's our flagship kickoff, and we're also planning on running another cycle starting in January. As I alluded to, there are potentially other options out there if you get in touch with us, you know, on kind of more of the part-time side or the flexible side, but we don't have anything officially in the works on that you know I can really talk about, and we aren't planning on running another full arc of the full-time program until January.
Okay.
Is there a reason you chose Ruby on Rails over full-stack JavaScript? So we dive incredibly deep into Rails and also deep into JavaScript. The only part of JavaScript that we don't cover is the back end, like server-side JavaScript. We actually serve JavaScript off of our Rails infrastructure. In the end of the day, if you know JavaScript, you can learn. I mean, if you know JavaScript very well, which is, you know, our goal is to teach you JavaScript, not just sort of this kind of, you know, well, here's JavaScript, here's jQuery, now you can make things move on the page, ready to move on. Our goal is to give you an understanding of JavaScript that you can use in a much more versatile way. We push that forward and we start teaching you more about front-end frameworks because that dovetails very well into the way that we've architected the full stack that we've taught you. So we do go very deep into JavaScript, and we do take that forward. We don't cover things like Node, but given the knowledge that you do get out of it, that's not exactly a stretch for you to pick up. In terms of so I mean, for us, it's not really kind of an apples to apples necessarily over it's either Ruby on Rails or full stack JavaScript. I mean, I absolutely love working with Rails. I think Ruby's really awesome to work with. It's when you're learning how to program, it's just there for you in so many ways, which is awesome. I mean, Rails is incredibly productive. It's so powerful. I can definitely say why I love Rails. And then what we've done with JavaScript has been to give you as much versatility as possible, while also giving you the production-ready front-end framework experience that most people are looking for. Other questions? Other questions? And you folks want to? What time management tools, if any, do you recommend? So one thing that we do while we're pairing is something called the Pomodoro technique, and basically that's I think you can go to tomato-timer.com, something like that. They have like a 25-minute timer, and basically the idea is that you break up your day into or your work period into 25-minute periods with 5-minute breaks. And that's actually how we organize our pairing as well, is you sort of set the timer, you do 25 minutes of work, 5-minute break, switch, 25 minutes of work, 5-minute break, switch. And I think that a lot of people have actually found that to be a useful way to kind of just organize their workflow. For me personally, it doesn't fit into my workflow, but I think that's a cool productivity tool. I mean, I don't know if you're interested, if you're kind of looking for like software and things like that, but Pomodoro technique is a pretty cool one, and if you're looking for like tracking your time and how much time you waste on various things, there is a program called Rescue Time, which will track everything on your computer that you've done, or I don't actually remember if it's just the web or if it's on your full computer. Give that a look. Newbie question: what kind of math capability is required for this course? So you don't need to have any formal math background, and you don't necessarily need to have done well in math class. In the end of the day, it's about logic and not abstract calculation. I mean, everything that we do, you can walk it back to logic, which is really cool. I mean, it's very concrete. There are abstract concepts that have very concrete roots, so that you can always kind of walk it back to that level of concreteness. Like for instance, algorithms is usually kind of, algorithms and data structures are usually kind of these big, opaque, scary topics. In the end of the day, the way that we teach them is we kind of teach them top down. We say, here's the concepts, but then here's how they're implemented on the very nitty-gritty level, which you really have to understand. If you want to understand, what the trade-offs are between different algorithms, for instance, you have to understand what your computer is actually doing to implement that. What sorts of memory does it have to allocate, and what little mini data structures does it have to use to kind of build that and use it, and how many steps does it take to do that? So in the end of the day, it's much more about logical thinking and being able to visualize these processes happening than it is necessarily about sort of an abstract sense of mathematics. You have to be sharp and have a logical brain, but you don't necessarily have to be a mathematician or have done well in math class. And we certainly, I mean, we actually do cover a little bit of trigonometry just by chance, just in some of the games, and that's not like anything that you necessarily need to know or care about. It's it's just because if we're shooting something in the air, we just need to make sure that it hits the right spot. But that's not something you have to like pull out from your trigonometry class. That's we'll help you out with that. I sense questions. Aha. So I had mentioned before, this is a salary question for graduates. We don't I mean, we haven't tracked salaries for graduates at all. Um, what is a starting salary expectation is, that's another highly variable question. It does depend on your previous experience going in. I mean, if you've had a lot of professional work experience, even if it's not coding related, that's usually helpful for employers anyways. Um, it's highly geographically dependent. I mean, the starting salaries in the Bay Area are obviously much higher than anywhere else in the whole country. So is the cost of living. It's just a really competitive market. I mean, the quality bar is also very, very high in the Bay Area. So it's kind of like high quality bar, high salaries, high cost of living. Everything is just up in the Bay Area. I mean, you can look on other boot camp sites for sort of like what their graduate salaries are, and you can kind of benchmark yourself off of those however you want. At the average salaries across the U.S. I mean, like, you could benchmark something in San Francisco. I really don't want to quote any numbers. I mean, you'll have to kind of go out and find them on your own. But it might be 15% lower in New York City. It might be 15% lower sort of elsewhere in the country. But it is going to be really geographically dependent. So Genevieve is asking, how did you get started in this field, and where did your interest stem from? So my background is I was an engineer in college back in the day. I mean, I come from a family, sort of an engineering family. I was a mechanical engineer actually in school, and I always loved doing the building and the logic side, but ultimately at that time it didn't seem like that was going to be the career I wanted in terms of the actual production of being a mechanical engineer. It just didn't appeal to me, so I ended up taking a detour through trading. I worked on Wall Street for a while, but what I really loved doing most was building models. I was a market analyst and a trader, and so I was building. I did a lot of Excel, did a lot of Visual Basic and macro construction, and found that what I really loved doing was building products that that my team could use, and then helping them with them and teaching them to them, and sort of embracing that whole side of things. And then it sort of just became obvious that type of thing was going to be a good fit for me. So a number of years ago I left that and learned how to code and well, I guess officially learned how to code, learned how to code on the web, learned how to kind of carry that forward and translate that into today's skill set as opposed to working in Excel. Any more questions? Let me check the Google group. How old are you? I am 29 years old. Let me check the Google group here. You guys are welcome to ask questions verbally as well. I mean, this is totally a conversation. So let me run back to that. How long have you been coding? Well, I mean, I had exposure to coding in college as well, and then just worked with it in various different ways throughout my professional career before it finally became my professional career, and then there was a big step up from there. Thoughts and questions? We can branch out. We don't have to talk about. We can talk about whatever you guys want. we had 15 minutes. 15 minutes. For whatever.
Eric, how fun is coding?
How fun is coding?
Yeah.
Oh man. I love coding. I actually end up. Here, let me just mute too much feedback. The days when I could sit down and devote a block of time to actually build something in code are some of my favorite days that exist. I mean, I end up, obviously, as a part of this, I end up doing a whole bunch of different things, from teaching to business side things. But coding is coding is sublime. I don't know. It's creation, and it's sort of there's like the macro sense of creation that comes along with it, which is really cool. And then on the very micro level, there's just this. I think it's just really well gamified. You know, it's there's this feedback mechanism of satisfaction, this intermittent satisfaction that you know you get from pulling something together and seeing pieces of it start to work. And every time a little piece of it works, there's like this little rush of endorphins, you know, and then you know, so like the act of coding is just awesome. I absolutely love doing it. Jihu is okay. So what would you say in general are the things that employers want to see in self-taught people as opposed to people with CS degrees or boot camps? I actually think, I mean, the ultimate criteria are the same regardless. I mean, they want to know that you know your stuff, that you're really highly motivated. So basically, you're highly motivated, highly capable, and you know that you're just a good person to work around, and that you know, and that you communicate well. The real question comes sort of how do you sell yourself along those lines. Obviously, if you come with a CS background, they sort of have this credential and they can say, oh, okay, great. So like you come in on a sort of a higher point on the like skills graph, you know. And what it doesn't tell necessarily is what your growth curve is. I mean, I've seen, you know, I really don't think there's necessarily a high correlation at all between CS degrees and ultimate skill in producing things that you can build with code. I think one of the major problems with a lot of CS programs is that people graduate without actually knowing how to build anything. You know, it's actually, frankly, I found you know that was part of what I didn't love about finishing up my engineering degree, was that it felt like we were getting away from building things and you know into much more theoretical realm, which was great for someone, but ultimately it wasn't what I wanted to do. Like I like building things, and I think you know, CS degree doesn't necessarily mean that you can build things. So in the end of the day, you know, how do you sell yourself? Well, what's cool about development is that it's a game where you can show what you've done. You can show how good you are. You know, in a way, there sort of is a right answer. You know, I mean, there are many different ways of doing something, obviously, but you know, unlike a lot of other fields where you sort of have to prove your value on this very fuzzy sort of axis, you know, in coding, you know, if you've built really awesome stuff, then you can probably build really awesome stuff. So really, what they want to see is that you've built awesome stuff. You know, and you know, are you capable? And then, are you motivated? You know, do you do this on your spare time? That's one reason that open source contribution is so important. Is that, you know, in the end of the day, I actually just wrote a blog post about this. A lot of what interviewers are looking for and trying to figure out, and hiring managers are trying to figure out, is what's your growth curve? You know, because again, like you can come in high on the axis, but if you're not growing, you're not going to keep up. You know, especially as a junior, you know, you need to be able to grow at an extraordinary rate, and you need to be able to show that. You need to be able to show that you're sort of a rocket, you know, just shooting off, and that you know you're learning not just at the pace that technology is changing, but you're bettering yourself. You're constantly learning, you know, because engineering is all about learning, whether it's coding or not. I mean, you know, technology is all about learning. And so you basically need to figure out, how do I sell myself as a growth curve? You know, you need to show that you've built awesome stuff, and you need to show that you're passionate about it, and you're passionate about learning additional awesome stuff. And then from that, they'll infer, okay, so this person, even if they might not be able to add significant actual value day one, that, you know, like, you know, okay, well, by the end of 6 months, they'll probably be breaking even. By the end of a year, they'll start to be really adding value, and then a couple of years out, they might be superstars. And so, okay, so I kind of tangented there. So let me just go back to the chat here and see what we've got. Next question: I've been out of work studying longer. I can see how that can be a negative or too long. In what ways is this possible to overcome the hurdle? Yeah, so like I said, I mean, people really do want to see a growth curve. They want to see that you haven't been dawdling around. You know, again, like everyone comes from a different background. If you've been picking up this stuff on the side, you know, there's only so much time you can throw at it. And I mean, obviously, there's sort of like a reasonable human assumption. You know, you sort of have to obviously factor that in. You know, but how do you overcome spending a lot of time on your own working on this stuff? I think you just have to have, like, no matter what, in the end of the day, you have to have great stuff to show for it too. So I mean, if you've been doing it for 2 years, like their mental bar for, like, you know, what should your growth curve be over 2 years is just going to be higher. And so you're gonna, you need to show that you built awesome stuff. You need to show that you can, that, that you're still learning at a very fast rate. And how do you do that? Again, I think it does come back to what have you built and what do you do with your free time, and how do those things all kind of come together? How do you live engineering in a way? I don't know if that's a great answer or not, but that's kind of, I guess, the best I have. So Clayton says, is contributing to open source part of the course? It's not an official part in the sense that we sort of deep dive into it, although we do talk you through kind of how that works. And obviously, the Odin project that I run is fully open source. It's not necessarily a dev tool. I think a lot of times when people talk about contributing to open source, they're kind of they really mean like contributing to a developer tool or something like that. But I think over the course of learning certain things in the course, sometimes you identify bugs and things like that in the tools that we're using, especially if you kind of go off on your own a little bit and really push the tools. And those are good opportunities for submitting bug fixes or even just issues on GitHub and kind of starting to get it in that flow. But yeah, we do have a module where we talk about like how the open source ecosystem functions, and then how, you basically learn all the workflows you need as part of the course, because we are using collaborative workflows. You're using GitHub constantly. You use GitHub to the point where it's not even an issue. Like Git just sort of is. It's just this thing that you use. And so that whole side of things, which I think is intimidating for a lot of beginners when they sort of think about, oh my God, like what happens if I submit a pull request and it doesn't work? We definitely do kind of talk you through, like you already know everything you need to know to do that, and then we kind of like bridge that gap in terms of just telling you, here's how that contribution cycle would look like, and here are the things, sort of the subconscious things that you should do or shouldn't do, and to kind of not piss people off or vice versa. And sometimes at the end of the day, you just got to do it and see what works and have thick skin. Can you talk more about open source? Okay, well, so I don't really understand what that means. Okay, so basically almost all the tools, well, yeah, I could probably say every single tool that we use is open source. And basically that means that the source code is literally sitting on the internet, and there's most likely in a GitHub repo, especially things like Ruby gems. These are libraries of code that some developer has created to solve a problem, and they just happen to put that on GitHub and say, hey, anyone's allowed to download this. There you go. Like, feel free to use it. Sometimes they're more maintained than others. Sometimes they're actually maintained by professional consultancies, like Thoughtbot or ThoughtWorks or Pivotal. Like they all have their gems that they maintain. And basically, what's cool about open source is that like all these developers are using these gems, and because they're developers, they're using them in all kinds of strange ways. And then they run into issues. Like some error message pops up when they were trying to log in a way that with their test suite. And so they say, well, okay, they figure out what went wrong, and then they realize, oh, this isn't even an issue with my code. This is actually the gem is doing something wrong. And so they dive into the gem source code and identify what that error is, and they say, oh, okay, well, I know how to fix this. Cool, I'm just going to submit a fix. So they submit the fix to the original gem, and then the people who maintain the gem say, oh, hey, that sounds like a great idea. It fixes someone else's error too. Why not? Merge the code, and now everyone gets to use it. So that's kind of the basics of the open source ecosystem in all of 30 seconds. So we've got about 5 more minutes. Any last questions? I know I don't have a good way of sort of totally going off on tangents. But hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. I think I'm losing my voice, which is, I think, to your benefit. Any questions from viewers out in the world? So, here we go. We'll be using a platform like Slack to chat with fellow students and tutors. What kind of platform? What kind of platform will we be using to get help with answers we're stuck on? So Slack is the chat system that forms essentially like the core of our experience. I mean, it's used by professional development teams all over the place. It's pretty much standard. Basically, the way that we choose our tools is we sort of just try and mimic what you'd get in a regular dev environment. So that means we're on Slack all the time, and if you need help, you just ping us on Slack. We drop into the video, because presumably you're going to be pairing with another student. You can just ping us, say, hey, have a question? Cool, bing, we're in, we're talking, and we are, we're going to solve the problem. So it's about as seamless as we can get, and we're usually we're checking in on students regularly, anyways. Just dropping in and asking questions, because we don't want you guys to get too far out in the weeds doing the wrong thing. So hopefully that answers your question, Kelvin. Okay. Let's see. So let me go check out the chat here. What things have you picked up regarding getting better at teaching? What factors do you think are key, unrecognized, and pivotal? There's an interesting question. Getting better at teaching. I guess you can approach that from a lot of different ways. I think a lot of it kind of comes subconscious. I wouldn't say subconsciously. I would say experience helps a lot. In terms of when you see three people kind of not quite get over the same hump, you naturally readdress that and say, well, what was that hump and why? And was there anything that I could do a little bit better? I think in the end of the day, teaching skills and development skills aren't always entirely correlated, and I think that's something that a lot of beginners have found in terms of when they go out on the internet and they look for help. There are people who have designed some really cool stuff who aren't very good at explaining it to beginners. So that's definitely something that I've learned, that I think a lot of it also comes down to feedback and really just trying to get a sense for how do you how do you identify when people are struggling when they aren't telling you that they're struggling. Or from the other perspective, how do you sort of play detective and dive into a piece of code that smells a little off, and they say, oh yeah, I totally understand that, and you say, I don't think you necessarily do. I guess a lot of that comes from experience. What other questions? We've got probably time for one more, and hit me with what you got. All right. Well, I guess we can close out now then. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for joining. I hope this was helpful. We'll try to do it again as well. Again, we're usually fairly accessible. I encourage you, if you're just getting started, go check out the website, vikingcodeschool.com. Go check out our prep work. It's a link on the top. The blog also hopefully is going to be helpful. We put a lot of work into the posts that we do publish. We don't publish every day. We publish weekly, bi-weekly, or tri-weekly. Never really sure if that's the exact way to say it or not. But thank you guys all for coming. I hope this was helpful, and have a great night.
Thank you.